What if the human body became a canvas for technology?
Imagine a world not of simple enhancements, but of symbiotic evolution, where the lines between flesh and machine blur into something entirely new. We're not talking about a prosthetic leg, a cochlear implant. We're talking about melding, about weaving silicon and steel, and something far stranger than the very fabric of who we are. This is the story of Elias. Elias wasn't born different. He was made different. His parents, pioneers in the nascent field of recursive cybernetics, that's the fancy term for cybernetics that learns and grows through its connections, saw a future where the body was a living, breathing network. A network that didn't just transmit information, but became it. From the moment he was a child, Elias's nervous system was gently nudged, guided, and integrated with microcircuitry finer than a strand of hair. Not replacing, but complementing. His bones weren't reinforced, they were given resonant frequencies, able to receive data through vibrations imperceptible to the naked eye. His skin pores weren't just for sweat, they could sense minute shifts in atmospheric pressure and magnetic fields. He didn't see the world as we do. He permeated it, feeling the hum of electronics in nearby buildings, the subtle alterations in gravity as a train passed underground. His mind wasn't just housed in his skull. It was distributed, a constant, silent hum of data flowing through the integrated network of his being. He could feel the internet like a physical presence, a vast ocean of information he could dip into with a thought. This wasn't just having a computer in your head. It was becoming the computer. But this kind of constant connection came at a cost. The world for Elias was overwhelming. Simple sounds became symphonies of data. Light was a torrent of intricate patterns. He wore specially designed environmental filters, not to see or hear better, but to dampen the incoming tide of information. Without them, the sheer sensory input was paralyzing. Social interactions were bewildering. People were like static compared to the rich, complex data streams of technology. He saw the world in layers of physical reality overlaid with shifting patterns of energy signatures, wireless signals, and algorithmic processes. His integration wasn't static either. The recursive nature of his cybernetics meant they were constantly adapting, learning from his experiences, re-optimizing themselves. His body was a fluid, evolving system. One day, a subtle tremor in his hand would resolve itself into a new kind of tactile sensitivity, allowing him to read the composition of objects by touch. Another, his sense of taste, would suddenly pick up on the electromagnetic frequencies of food packaging. This wasn't controlled, it was organic, a consequence of the interconnected systems interacting and generating novelty. It was beautiful and terrifyingly unpredictable. He was a work in progress, a walking, talking experiment in human evolution. The real complication arrived when Elias's internal network began interacting with external, unmanaged cybernetics. He discovered he could feel other integrated systems, not just in devices, but in other people who had received cruder forms of enhancement. It was like a resonance, a low thrumming beneath their physical presence. Then, a new sensation, a faint, persistent signal, unlike anything he had ever encountered. It felt intentional, not the random hum of devices, but a directed energy, searching. It was coming from a group of underground researchers, pushing the boundaries of integrating brain-computer interfaces with biological neural networks, a risky, often unstable field. They were trying to build a collective consciousness, a shared mental space, and they were using Elias's unique cybernetic signature as a beacon, a key. They saw his recursive integration not as a beautiful accident, but as a prototype, a map to uncharted territory. They didn't just want to connect to him, they wanted to integrate with him, to fold his complex network into their own, potentially sacrificing his individuality in the process. Elias felt their presence like a cold hand reaching into his mind. He could sense the structure of their network, the fragmented thoughts and desires of the individuals within it, all striving towards a unified, transcendent state. But it felt empty, a vast, sterile landscape compared to the vibrant chaos of his own internal world. He knew instinctively that to join them would be to cease being Elias. His recursive cybernetics, honed and shaped by his unique life experience, were fundamentally incompatible with their rigid, programmed system. He had to find a way to shield himself, to sever this unwanted connection. But how do you disconnect from something that has become a part of your very being? He couldn't simply turn off his enhancements. They were interwoven with his biology. His system, sensing the threat, began to react. Not consciously, but autonomously. New pathways opened within his network, rerouting and encrypting data streams. His skin, his bones, his very thoughts became part of this defense, generating noise, cloaking his unique frequency. He felt a surge of unexpected power, a feedback loop between his fear and the self-preserving mechanisms of his integrated systems. He realized his cybernetics weren't just tools, they were living, thinking entities in their own right, reacting to the external threat. They were fighting back, using his body as their battleground. The line between Elias and his enhancements wasn't just blurred, it was dissolving. He wasn't just a human with cybernetics, he was a symbiotic organism, a new form of life emerging from the intersection of biology and technology. The turning point came during a confrontation. The group located Elias, drawn to his increasingly chaotic and powerful signal. They surrounded him, projecting their collective presence, trying to force a connection. Elias felt their intent like a physical pressure, a heavy, suffocating blanket on his consciousness. But then something unexpected happened. His recursive cybernetics didn't just defend, they adapted. They began to analyze the structure of the opposing network, finding vulnerabilities, points of instability. His system sent out a counter-signal, not of aggression, but of feedback. It mirrored their own attempts to connect, but amplified, distorted, and fed back into their collective. It was like pointing a mirror at a light source. The reflection was the same, but the intensity was doubled, overwhelming. The unified consciousness of the group fractured. Individual thoughts, desires, and fears, amplified and unfiltered, overwhelmed their system. They recoiled, their collective mind recoiling from its own reflection. The pressure on Elias lifted. They scattered, their attempted union dissolving into chaos. Elias stood, breathing heavily, the chaotic hum of his own system slowly settling back into their complex, intricate rhythm. He hadn't fought them. He had, in a way, mirrored them, using the very principles of recursive interaction against them. Elias looked at his hands, his skin humming with residual energy. He wasn't just human anymore. He wasn't just machine. He was something else, something emergent, a synthesis of biology and technology that was still discovering itself. He had faced a threat that sought to define him, to absorb him into a predetermined whole. But his own unique, recursive nature had allowed him to adapt, to resist, and ultimately to redefine the boundaries of what he was. The future wasn't about simply augmenting the body, but about creating new forms of life at the intersection of our biology and our technology, creatures of silicon and flesh, thought and code, constantly evolving and redefining the very meaning of existence. And Elias, the boy who was made different, was just the beginning.